Michael Noonan, the Irish Finance Minister, thank you so much for being with us. Now, Mr. Noonan, we kind of talked about the Irish economy, and I just want to get your sense, first of all. You've been pretty optimistic that Ireland is a poster child for Europe. You've been pretty optimistic that actually Ireland can go back to the markets by the end of the year. Is there anything that now is making you doubt that? We had some pretty bad economic figures. Europe is not doing great. Is there a danger that Ireland will be engulfed in all of this again? Well,
there are different measures of success. Ireland is certainly the A student in Europe if you look at fulfilling the programme. 180 separate items of the programme have been fulfilled in Ireland, ranging from taxes to very long pieces of legislation to changing in the labour market, making the country more competitive. And we've drawn down 83% of the funding available. So on that measure we're successful. The next measure then is, can we get back into the markets on a sustainable basis? And the evidence suggests that we probably can. We're very likely to do so, but this year will tell the tale. If you take July of 2011, the differential between German bonds and Irish bonds was 11%. Last Monday it was 2%. So you can see the progress that's been made. Now, in cooperation with European authorities and the IMF, we have drawn up an exit strategy, and the other side of an exit strategy is full market access on a sustainable basis at affordable levels. So again, if that's the measure of success, well, we're well positioned and we're doing very well. But for my electorate, their measure of success is the economy growing and our jobs being created. Now, on that basis, we grew in 2011, 1.5%. We grew last year by almost 1%. We built our budget this year on 1.5% real growth. So we're doing better than the rest of Europe. The model is export-driven growth, and our exports are very strong, and particularly strong now in exporting internationally traded services. What we find most difficult is to translate that into jobs. Now, our unemployment rates are over 14%, but for the last 18 months, the variation on unemployment is within a 10,000 band. So we have stabilized it. So the next job now, economically and politically and socially, is to get people back to work. And we have a big structural problem because so many people were involved in the construction industry and they'll never work there again because it was disproportionate, and they have to be retrained and redeployed to other areas of the economy. So if that's the measure of success, we've got a lot of work to do yet.
You've covered a lot of ground there, Minister. Let me try and sort of pin you down on a few of the issues. Regaining market access. When are we going to see the country issue a 10-year? Is there a discussion that will happen in the next month, the next 6 months? Have you had a discussion with the rating agencies about when they're going to put you back onto investment grade? Can you just give us a few more specifics about what you see happening next and the kind of timelines that you're talking about?
Well, the rating agencies discuss issues with us regularly.
Sure.
And our funding agency is the National Treasury Management Agency, yep. NTMA, and I have discussions with them. They report directly to me. So in the course of this year, we'll go back into the market for long-term.
In the course of this year, do you think that is sooner rather than later?
It's more likely to be the first half of the year than the second half. Because, as you know, under the OMT rules, yep. Which we would hope to avail of later in the year or early next year, we need 2 long-term issuances to qualify as an applicant for OMT.
So you have had a discussion. Where are the discussions about accessing the OMT programme?
The European Central Bank is independent.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not possible for the Troika to speak for them collectively. They speak for themselves. But they have made it clear what the rules for an applicant are.
And it is your intention to apply for the OMT?
I don't think we'd apply to avail of it. We'd apply to use it as a backstop.
Right.
So that we could access the market, so that lenders would know that it was there. We're doing a number of prudential things. We're holding about 18 months funding all the time now.
Yep.
So any systemic shock anywhere in the world, we could ride it out without borrowing because we have 18 months of funding, and we'll continue as we spend that servicing, you know, the country's needs. We'll fill it at the back for lower cost money. So that's one strategy. There are a number of things then as we exit in cooperation with our European partners. We get advice. They have given us a kind of menu of things that we should consider. I suppose the principal thing is to stick to the knitting, stay with the programme.
Yeah.
It's been successful, and it's our fullest intention to do that, get the deficit down, make the debt more sustainable, as we have done with the new arrangements on IBRC.
Minister, can I just ask you also, you talked about exports. Exports are going to be much more difficult if the euro keeps on rising. At what level does it become dangerous for you? Are you already in a danger zone? And do you think that the ECB should do more to actually try and lower euro?
Well, we're exporting strongly. In value terms, our exports went up about 3.5% last year, but that's on the manufacturing side, the exports of goods. If you look at the export of services, we're into double digits now. The increase has been 11 or 12%, and it's extremely strong. You see, all the...
At some point it must start to bite.
You mean on the currencies?
On the currency side.
Well, it's not affecting us yet. You see, if you look at the history of the euro, we're at about midpoint, and midpoint is quite sustainable. We were exporting strongly when it was, you know, almost 20 points higher. So, and a lot of what we export is not that particularly sensitive to small movements in price, and our competitive position at home has changed dramatically. We've cut the cost base dramatically in the economy at home. Wages have come down, input prices have come down, so we have a cushion against currency movements. So we would share the general European policy position that the market should decide relative values of currencies, and that there shouldn't be interference to try and steer the market.
Minister, the Irish government's involvement in the banking sector came in two ways. We've dealt with the sort of the promissory note side of things. The extension of that duration obviously has had a very big impact, but there's also the sort of the more direct involvement. Is there a sense that you think you can persuade your European peers to use the ESM to retroactively provide financing into the Irish banking sector?
Well, there was a commitment made on the 29th of June. At the heads of state and government.
Sort of become a little bit more blurred since then.
Yes, but it was reinforced by Chancellor Merkel and President Hollande directly in talking to our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister. Ireland was a special case, and effectively in shorthand, you know, in due course, we realised that there was a very heavy imposition put on you, so you'll be looked after. There's that kind of general understanding there. Now, how it would work in practice, it's not possible to prescribe or describe the detail yet, but the European Banking Union project is going ahead, and in parallel with that, the protocols under which the ESM would operate for capitalisation of banks are being drawn up, and there's a kind of political steering being given at each Eurogroup meeting now in parallel with the drafting, and the issue of retrospectivity is still on the table in terms of drafting protocols. So we'll see how it works. I'm taking part in all these discussions, and it certainly, I think Ireland has a very strong case because, you know, part of the intervention which put the burden of the bank debt, 40% of GDP, onto the shoulders of the Irish taxpayer. While some of it was our own fault, a lot of the action was taken at the direction of the European Central Bank to prevent contagion spreading to the European banking system. As Ronald Reagan used to say, you know, we took one for the team. Yeah. And I think the team owes us now.
Senior creditors didn't.
And now that the policy instruments are being put in place to allow retrospective compensation of some sort to be applied, we want to negotiate in that position. and we feel that there's a lot of goodwill on the political side in Europe to facilitate this in some way. But I couldn't describe any detail yet because there's a lot of moving parts on this. But we want to keep the principal position centre stage as an Irish ask and continue to build our friendships across Europe.
Minister, were you surprised? We want to, some market commentators were very surprised about the Bundesbank open opposition to the Anglo-Irish deal. We heard from Jens Wiedmann putting that very clearly. What's your reaction to what you heard from them?
Well, you see, the discussions and talks had been going on for several months, and a lot of people were involved. And in the end of the day, it couldn't have happened unless it were agreed in Frankfurt. And the agreement had to be by 17 governors of the Eurozone countries. And that included Mr. Wiedmann. And the expression used by Mario Draghi when he announced it was that the deal had been noted and that there was no dissent. It was noted unanimously. So while the Bundesbank in its comments subsequently commented along the lines that we expected them to comment, and there wasn't any particular surprise in what was said, they didn't challenge the fact that it was done and that it was in accordance with the treaty.
No rules were broken?
No rules were broken.
Do you expect any challenge? Do you expect a legal challenge to emanate from Germany? Could there be a challenge, and how destabilising would that be?
I don't expect any challenge from any authority or institution in Europe. Individuals frequently take cases. We have a string of them in the Irish courts always, but they don't go very far.
So just for the record, you don't think that the accord could unravel at this point? You have it's done.
No, the deal is done, and we, not only is the deal done in terms of legalities, but we've acted on it. We have already cancelled the promissory notes. We have replaced the promissory notes with a basket of Irish government bonds. We are moving the assets from IBRC that was through the liquidator into NAMA. We're offering some of the assets for sale. So, I mean, the ship has left the port. It's sailing on under new rules, and no, there's no suggestion whatsoever that any of this will be unwound.
Mr. Can I just ask you, of course Ireland also has the EU presidency, the EU rotating presidency. What kind of advice would you give to countries such as Italy, such as Spain? We're facing Italian elections. There's still so many unknowns. If there's one piece of advice that you would give governments there at the moment, what would it be?
I would say be consistent in policy, and what you're doing in Italy and Spain is working. So regardless of what political change takes place, there's a core set of policies that need to be followed. Europe is far more stable than it was even 12 months ago. I'll give you one example. We sold Irish life insurance to a big Canadian multi-billion institution. Last year, the same company pulled out because they were worried about the euro. They came back 12 months later. They gave us 200 million more for the same institution. And they didn't pull out because of fears of Ireland. They pulled out because they were afraid to invest in Euroland. They're no longer afraid. So the perception of the Eurozone now is that of stability, problems being put behind it, good decisions being made, moving towards growth again in the second half of this year. So I think the Eurozone has a very good story to tell now. And it's up to the Italians to decide who governs them. But I wish them very well.
Minister, one final question. You are, as Francine says, you hold the rotating presidency at the moment. There is a little bit of panic in the City of London at the moment about one-for-one bonus ratios to salary and whether or not the UK can execute some sort of last-minute deal to avert what some would say here as being quite onerous rules. Your sense of how this one is ultimately going to end up?
Well, it's the CRD4 directive which puts the Basel capital rules in place for banks. But the bit about bonuses is an add-on by the European Parliament. And it seems to be the one large issue of substance that's left in the negotiations. So we'll act as honest brokers. We'll try and get agreements. We can see you know, the validity of both positions, but we think there's a via media where a settlement can be reached without upsetting the cost base in the City of London, or without depriving people of rightfully earned bonuses. But it has to be done in a new formulation.